Hey, y'all, welcome back to Mountain Murders sometime this week.
I'm Heather.
And I'm a well-rested Dylan.
Hey.
Yeah.
You're well rested.
Yeah, I feel good.
I'm sure the listeners needed to know that.
Oh, well, they'll be able to tell.
Now
They'll be like, wow.
now they will sleep well knowing that you had a good night's rest.
Yeah, and it's, I'm sure they're overly concerned about my rest.
They are. Somehow they've managed to carry on this whole time, like not knowing how well you rested, but now they know.
But at the end of this episode, they're going to be like, Dylan was obviously well-rested.
Obviously well rested.
All right, so how are you doing, Heather?
I'm happy as a clam, bro.
Oh.
I don't know how happy clams are, but they say they're pretty damn happy. So
They look happy.
they look happy.
When you see them in the wild.
You know why? Because I'm well fed and well rested.
Oh, you're happy?
And moisturized.
I know. You did like an early morning moisturizing today.
I do that every morning.
That's part of
You're just not here. It's part of my morning routine.
Wow. So you're moisturized in the morning and night.
Yeah.
Oh, do you have a midday moisturizing?
No, I don't really do the midday, because I'm busy
Oh.
doing other things.
All right. So here we are on a little true crime recap. What you got for us?
Oh, Dylan, there is a lot happening in the true crime world. Let's not dilly-dally. Let's get started here. This story is so strange and heartbreaking for the family. 31-year-old Matthew Hertgen, also known as the preppy Princeton murder suspect.
Oh, that's a heck of a nickname.
Is accused of ripping out his little brother's eyeball after beating and slashing him to death.
Oh, my God.
He allegedly beat and stabbed his 26-year-old brother Joseph to death with a golf club and a knife in their family's luxury apartment. This was last Saturday, so it's been about a week ago. He is also accused of setting the family cat on fire, tearing out his brother's eyeball and eating it, according to police reports. Now, he faces 30 years to life in prison if he is convicted of this heinous crime. This twisted rampage, which has stunned those who knew this well-heeled family, came months after the accused, and they're calling him a cannibal killer, Dylan, posted some chilling poems on Facebook that described blood oozing out of eyes and that he wanted to sharpen knives.
Oh, okay. He's got he's a lyricist.
He also took a selfie with a cat toy a day before this vicious murder.
Now, I got to say, this is, I don't even know how to process. I don't know how a family even deals with a situation like this.
Like I said, it's heartbreaking. I mean, you're losing two sons.
Yeah.
And, not to sound cliche or anything, but it's like this whole kind of Cain and Abel brother killing brother thing. And I mean, like you said, I wouldn't know how to wrap my head around that as a parent.
Yeah, and in such a heinous fashion. I mean, God, how do you even process all that?
So the brothers, in addition to their eldest sibling, were standout athletes. And Dylan, they grew up in a $1.1 million home in the exclusive Toms River area before the family moved to this ritzy location in Princeton. The Michelle Muse Apartments, where the crime took place, is located in the college town of Princeton. And units there can run up to $2 million. I think I was reading the rent there is like $6,000 plus a month for an apartment.
That sounds about right for $1 million unit.
Up to $2 million.
Jeez.
So they lived in a $1.1 million house and then moved into these fancy apartments.
I will never have to worry about moving into a $2 million apartment.
Well, if I had $2 million, I'm not going to live in an apartment. Sorry.
Well, I'm sure.
I mean, I guess some people want that, but
No, I'm going to have a chunk of land out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I'm buying like 60 acres and I'm going to put up a big fence around it, like a barbed wire fence.
Fence 60 acres with, controlled entry points and a single wide trailer in the center of it.
And some goats.
And some goats.
And some chickens.
Some chickens.
Wow. And like a little greenhouse?
Yeah, maybe a miniature cow or two.
Oh, this is and Rufus would have so many places to frolic outside.
Or another jackass.
This sounds amazing. Oh, then we would have. Then I would have two.
That's right.
You and the donkey. Okay, so officers discovered this grisly scene when 31-year-old Hertgen called the cops to report a dead body and fire inside this home. When they arrived, they found the victim's body with a bloody knife, fork, and a plate, like near the body.
Okay.
And that led cops to believe that maybe this victim was missing an organ and that the alleged perpetrator, his brother, had consumed a missing organ.
So there's a dinnerware set around the body, basically.
A very strange scene. A motive behind the killer's spiral into, what seems to be some kind of, how else can we describe it as like a homicidal madness remains unknown. So far, no motive. He is due back in court on March 6th. And when he arrived, I should mention, to court earlier on February 28th, he was wearing a suicide vest because apparently he had tried to hang himself at the Mercer County Correction Center where he was being held on the murder charge.
I'm going to venture a guess that he is an undiagnosed schizophrenic.
Or he's had some sort of mental break.
I think this is way
like
beyond
a psychosis or something.
Beyond him just being mad for some reason at his brother. The mutilation, the cannibalistic act.
It's so shocking. It's bad enough when I first heard the story and I was like, oh no, like this brother killed his younger brother. That in itself is a terribly tragic story. But then when you find out the details, he ate his brother's eyeball. That's a lot.
It's disturbing. It's so far outside of normal that there's no one would ever think that's okay. Damn.
No one would ever think that's okay. I like that you clarify this.
Yeah, and if you do,
unless maybe it's Jeffrey Dahmer, he'd probably think that it's okay.
Well, that's just a Wednesday for Jeffrey before he was killed. But if you do think that's okay, don't, because it's not. All right.
After Jeffrey Dahmer read that he ate the victim's eyeball, Dahmer would be like, I see why.
No, in the comments, he'd be like, recipe, please.
I see.
Oh,
it's
okay.
Tasty.
Okay, it's enough.
All right. I thought you would laugh at my terrible joke. All right, moving along, Dylan. A lot of folks got into true crime with the Serial podcast, the hit podcast released in 2014, which covered the case of Adnan Syed. Did you ever listen to the Serial podcast?
I did not, but, it's credited with kind of, I guess, taking podcasts mainstream in a way is rather early on.
Kind of my understanding that it really was a podcast that kind of drew people into podcasts and kind of reignited this interest or created this spark in true crime podcasting. So Adnan Syed's murder conviction will stand. Baltimore prosecutors announced that they will withdraw a motion to vacate his sentence or his conviction, and a judge will weigh in on whether he should be resentenced. The mother and brother of Hae Min Lee spoke at the sentence reduction hearing for Syed a day after prosecutors announced they would withdraw a motion to vacate his murder conviction. So if you're not familiar with the case, Syed was originally convicted of the 1999 murder of Lee, who was his 18-year-old ex-girlfriend. She was found dead in a Baltimore park nearly a month after she vanished. Now, Syed has long maintained his innocence, and this case was thrust into the public consciousness when the podcast Serial, took a look at the case and cast doubt on his conviction. Now, after spending more than 2 decades behind bars, his conviction was vacated in 2022, and Baltimore prosecutors moved to have the conviction vacated, having, quote, lost confidence in the integrity of the conviction, and he was ultimately released from prison. But in 2023, a Maryland Supreme Court reinstated his conviction, ruling that Lee's family's rights were violated by not receiving proper notice of a hearing to overturn Syed's conviction. On Tuesday, February 25th, the new Baltimore State's attorney announced that it would withdraw its motion to vacate the conviction, saying that the motion contained, quote, false and misleading statements. Syed's murder conviction will stand, though he currently remains out of prison. At a court hearing to determine whether Syed's sentence would be reduced to time served, Lee's family opposed this resentencing. She spoke in Korean via a video, but her remarks have been shared with the media. And she said, quote, "There is a Korean proverb that says when a parent or husband dies, you bury them in the ground. But when a child dies, you bury them in your heart. So you get buried in the ground together when you die. However, to me, who could not even touch or see the body of my daughter, the only thing had was the last time she said, 'I love you, Mom.'"
Damn. Now, are you familiar with this case originally?
I'm not like super well versed in the case, but I mean, I know enough to kind of understand what's happened, but I don't really know what like the evidence was,
Right.
how he was prosecuted, convicted, why they think he did it. Like, I don't know all those details.
Yeah, I know. There's people out there right now like, wow, you call yourself true crime podcasters.
I know. And I mean, I hate to say it, but it's just a case that never really, I guess it just didn't really capture my attention. And I tried to listen to Serial when it came out, and I don't know. It just, I didn't really, it didn't draw me in, I suppose is a good way to say it.
It happens.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting. So it's like a really big case, and a lot of folks have followed that case over the years. Now, Dylan, moving along, it has been announced, or, kind of speculated here, that the defense for the Idaho quadruple murder suspect Brian Kohberger may cite autism to try to strike the death penalty option.
Okay.
So attorneys for the man accused of stabbing those 4 University of Idaho students to death have nodded to autism spectrum disorder in asking the court to ensure that the 30-year-old wouldn't get the death penalty if convicted.
I mean, I personally kind of think that's a slap in the face of everyone who suffers from autism on all the levels.
Well, there are many people on the spectrum, and they don't commit quadruple murders.
Yeah,
right?
So I think even putting that forth is kind of gross. I mean, honestly.
Yeah. So the full documents are not available online, but his defense recently filed a motion to, quote, strike death penalty re autism spectrum disorder. A motion to redact or seal newly filed records was also entered in support of their motion to strike the death penalty re autism spectrum disorder under seal.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, the full documents are not publicly available yet. You can't get them online. And it's not immediately clear whether Kohberger has been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder or if the defense is seeking a diagnosis. The motions mark the latest attempt by Kohberger's attorneys to try to remove the possibility of the death penalty. Look, if this guy did this crime, it's like, what the fuck, dude? You can kill 4 people, but then you're like, no, I don't want the death penalty.
Yeah, I know.
Like, what a little bitch.
Well, and it will be groundbreaking news when an expert paid for by the defense diagnoses him with autism spectrum disorder, right?
Yeah. So, again, they're trying to remove the death penalty from the table. The efforts also follow their failed attempt to convince a judge to suppress evidence related to investive genetic genealogy, which is a relatively new technique in which authorities upload, an unknown suspect's DNA.
No, that's when they
into
claim
a database, and then they learn about potential relatives.
That's when they claimed his right to privacy was violated, right?
Yeah.
He never asked for you to put his DNA into the database.
The prosecution, meanwhile, recently asked the judge to bar the use of an alibi defense and claimed there was another perpetrator without evidence being shared first. Prosecutors also asked for some sealed expert testimony on Kohberger's mental health not be allowed. Now, there has been pretty limited research about autism and crime. For those who, don't really understand autism spectrum disorder, it's a neurological and developmental disorder that can affect how people interact with others, communicate, learn, behave. And while research about people with autism or autism-like characteristics in crime is limited, studies have suggested they are no more likely than people without autism to offend or encounter the criminal justice system.
There you go. If he has autism, he just happens to be a monstrous murdering asshole who has autism, right?
Yeah.
I don't think there's no correlation or no causation there.
But, I think you have to understand, I guess I see both sides of this, because part of me is like, regardless of whether you have this diagnosis or not, like, you committed a crime.
Right.
And if you are on a spectrum, but you're able to attend college, to lead,
to excel in all.
Exactly. And to lead a life of independence, then you can't say, well, I murdered these four people because I have autism and I don't understand how that's wrong. I mean, come on. You're studying criminal justice. You know it's wrong.
Well, you know it's wrong, and the best way to avoid the death penalty is not to murder 4 people.
Yeah.
Right? I mean...
But, I mean, I understand, like, groups like Autism Society and Autism Speaks have kind of been pushing for more training among law enforcement and judicial systems to recognize people's diagnoses. Because an individual's autism, like, no one is the same. Like, and I know this because, you know, I have a child with autism. And they say, like, if you've met one person with autism, then you've met one person with autism because everyone's so different. I mean, It's a spectrum, right? And you will not probably in your lifetime meet 2 autistic people who are the same. They can be very different. So I understand why these groups push that, like, you know, it's more of an individualized thing that needs to be taken into consideration. But I also feel like, come on. Don't use that as an excuse for this guy committing a horrific crime.
They're grasping at straws, in my opinion.
They are. I mean, they're just trying anything.
They're trying anything they can think of to at least reduce his sentence, I guess. And, I mean, that's their job. That's the way it works. But I think he should be put to death because I think he did it.
Yeah.
I think he killed those people for whatever reason, if it was obsession over one of the girls or whatever caused him to do this. I believe he did it, and I think he should pay the ultimate price in a timely fashion.
Well, I'm sorry, but autism didn't cause you to kill 4 people.
No, I would argue that autism would keep you from killing 4 people, right? I mean, just from, you know, some of the characteristics of autism. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't...
Like not wanting to interact with someone. I mean, damn.
All right, Dylan, this is a case from back in our hometown that we've discussed at length here on Mountain Murders. And that is the case of Noah Bolden, who's 28 years old. He was accused of a gruesome New Year's Eve killing back in 2022 in Canton, North Carolina, where he killed an Uber driver named Julia Holland. He has actually pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. And this was, basically he agreed to this substantial reduction in charges and prison time for the killer's mother. So he pled guilty so that his mother, who helped her son cover up his crime and also thwarted the investigation, would get a reduced sentence.
That's so sweet.
So he's trying to save his mom, who aided in this crime.
Yeah, after he killed and mutilated a woman's body. Viciously.
Yeah, so Julia Holland, an Uber driver, picked Bolden up and gave him a ride home that night. And it was a completely senseless and brutal murder. And they believe Bolden did this because he just wanted to know what it was like to kill someone. So while Bolden will die in prison, his mother will see a lot less time behind bars. Her sentence potentially would have been 27 to 34 years, and that's been reduced to as little as 3.7 years.
She deserves more than that because she knew of what her son did, and she really went out of her way to try to help him get away with it.
Yeah, so after Holland's family reported her missing on New Year's Day, it was a phone call by Noah's mother, Pamela Bolden, that became a critical turning point in the case. Now, Pamela Bolden had called a friend in a panic, confessing her son's crime, according to court records. This phone call, I mean, it just blows my mind. She rambles on and on about how she needs to clean up the crime scene and hide the victim's body and car. So they have all this evidence. She talks about how they got to get rid of everything, and that as soon as he brings me some stuff, I don't know where I'm going to take it, where I'm going to put it. We've got to do something with her. He is going to have to get her out of the house and get her into the car. And no, I'm not having any part of that, she said. But then she's asking a friend, like, where can we take the car? And what if everything doesn't burn? And then he's going to have to get rid of a love seat and clean up the house after he does all that.
Yeah. And during this whole time, it sounds like he's acting like a petulant, enabled adult child who doesn't want to deal with even the murder cleanup of what he's done. And it was on the friend that she reached out to is actually who went to authorities, right?
Yeah. So Holland, a 49-year-old mother, was killed, as we mentioned, on New Year's Eve at Bolden's apartment in Canton. He shot her in the back of the head. Bolden had been at a strip club in Asheville for New Year's Eve and had texted Holland to give him a ride home that night. Of course, she's reported missing the next morning by her family, and another 24 hours passed before investigators were able to track Holland's whereabouts to Bolden's home. Her car was in the driveway, and her body was found inside. It was Holland's mother and her best friend who told the judge, Sherry Elliott, that the loss has left them grief-stricken. Holland's daughter, in a written statement, described her mother as being her best friend. I mean, this is really sad for this family.
I don't think they should have struck any kind of a deal. This case was a strong case. They had a very strong case against him, and I personally think they should have hammered him and his mother to the fullest extent of the law. I don't see the beneficial, cost savings? Of course, it's a lot of times what the family wants. Sometimes they don't want to be involved in, long, drawn-out court proceedings. It's too painful for them, and that's obviously their choice. What I have to say about that means absolutely nothing, but I just don't get it, because she deserves to die in jail, too, to the extent that she went to try to help her son get away with this.
Well, and her son's probably a piece of shit because she's enabled him his whole life.
And yeah,
this guy has a massive criminal history.
Yep. He's abusive to previous girlfriends.
Not a good guy.
He's a terrible person.
We knew someone who worked with social services that had to supervise visitation with his children because he's just, he's a piece of shit.
He's a killer. He's a monster.
Well, he's a violent monster. Exactly. So, as we mentioned, Pamela Bolden called her friend and was making these statements, like talking about how they have to clean and get rid of them, and that they've already gotten rid of the murder weapon and all this. Well, her friend quickly notified authorities, and that's when the Haywood County Sheriff's Office set up a stakeout of Bolden's house, which is located at 78 McCracken Road off of Newfound Road, which is only about a half a mile or so from I-40,
right,
from the interstate. Phillips, the detective, was able to surveil the residence from a distance and not be seen. So, they're putting in the work, trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, they instantly put eyes on the property, and they had, if I'm not mistaken, they had her reach back out to her, right, and recorded the conversation.
They did. So this Detective Phillips, he's surveilling the area. Meanwhile, while he's watching the house, the friend turned informant went to the Canton Police Department, and that's when they made a phone call to Pamela Bolden in the presence of authorities so that the call could be recorded. And Bolden talks extensively about the challenges that she's facing because she's got to dispose of this evidence and, move the body.
The murder weapon.
Yeah.
Everything. It was really chilling when this happened, because to have this kind of peek on the inside of an incident like this, while in real time, while it's happening, it was fascinating from a true crime perspective, honestly.
And that's not the only person that Pamela Bolden confessed to that day. After this phone call, in which the Canton police are listening in and get the recording, she rushes to the home of a local attorney in Canton and approaches him in his driveway, which I'm sure is unsettling for any lawyer.
And inappropriate.
To have someone just show up at your house. And she begins ranting about how her son has murdered this Uber driver. That's when the attorney calls the sheriff of Haywood County, Bill Wilkie, and tells him that the mother of a potential suspect came into his driveway just now.
Right. And obviously he's not that person's lawyer in any official capacity, so there's no right to attorney-client privilege or any of that. And he quickly told the investigators what he knew as well.
Yeah, I believe that was Pat Smathers, the attorney. But Pamela Bolden then returns to this area where her son lives, And by that time, she's being followed by an unmarked sheriff's patrol car. Luckily, the car she was driving had a defective taillight. That gave officers a probable cause to pull her over, and she's been detained in the county jail ever since. So.
Well, I got to say, I mean, obviously the informant coming directly in all the cases and stories we've done over the years, when people confess to someone or, you know, try to force them to help them in any way, clean up or, you know, accessory after the fact in situations like this informant did what I would do, went directly to investigators, and obviously that helped them in their case. But I gotta say, I thought they handled the rest of it in a very professional manner and a very did a really good job, the local investigators, because there's been many times we've slammed them locally because you know, a lot of times it seems like they're not doing a good job. But I thought they handled this
No, they were really on top of this.
Very on top of this, and they put eyes on the property, eyes on him, in effect. So in a way, they were already early on protecting scene integrity to a degree. So I thought they did a really good job.
All right, so I'm glad that Julia Holland's family is finally getting justice in this case.
Yeah,
it was a just absolutely gruesome situation, but I have some insider knowledge, Dylan, that I want to drop on you guys.
Oh, is this tea?
It's a little tea.
Damn, I'm thirsty, girl.
Yeah. So
Yes.
there is only one strip club in Asheville.
Oh, yeah.
It's currently, I believe, flooded out.
Oh, gosh, that's a shame. What are all those girls going to do for college money?
I don't know. But here's the deal. Here's the tea, Dylan. And I'm not going to tell you all how I've got insider knowledge here, because I may or may not have bartended at this club.
Briefly.
But when this guy was at the strip club that night, he got into a fight with a patron at the club.
Right, because he's an antisocial fucking asshole.
Because he's a maniac.
Who doesn't know how to follow any type of normal rules.
He followed this patron into the men's room and had a gun on him.
Brandished a weapon
On this other patron. The bouncers were able to, like, wrangle him, get the gun away from him. And they took him outside, and that's when they told him he needed to leave, and that's when he called the Uber, and they gave him his gun back. Now, if the... And I feel like the strip club plays some role in this, because they should have called the fucking cops on this guy. Because then they would have found, like, he wasn't supposed to have a firearm. He's a felon. And then that would have been dealt with, and he wouldn't have gotten into an Uber with this woman.
He would have went to jail.
And then murdered her.
He would have went to jail and likely went back to jail because he's a violent felon.
And I also think it's really irresponsible that you have this, you have a strip club that does not have any kind of
real security.
Safety. I mean, shouldn't you have some sort of metal detector or something to enter into a club so that you don't have someone in there with a gun? And not only that, but you're just going to let him leave and you're not going to call law enforcement. Like, do you not care about your employees? Because how easy would it be for someone to just march up in this club with a gun and do a mass shooting?
Or hurt one of, the
employees.
Yeah.
I mean, I just am like, what the fuck? But yeah, they didn't call the cops and they let this guy go and gave him his gun back.
Wow.
And he's a felon. He's not even supposed to have a gun. It's an illegal weapon.
So just in that moment, if they had instead say, call the cops, got the cops down there, and they'd found out he's a violent felon, shouldn't have a gun. I'm sure the gun was illegal, not in his name, all that. And he would have went to jail instead of getting in that Uber car.
Yeah, absolutely. That's 100%. Like, I'm not lying when I tell y'all this story. And I don't know how that strip club hadn't been sued.
And, well, because
I feel like that was such a failing on their part that they have some responsibility for this murder.
Well, and not just for the safety.
Because I don't think anybody else that runs a business, somebody pulls out a gun, tries to threaten another customer, is just going to, like, kick this person out. You're going to call the cops because this is a whole incident.
Right.
They've brandished a gun. They've threatened a customer. I mean, it's a lot, but they would rather just send this person on their way than to get cops involved because, oh no, we can't have cops at the strip club.
Well, and I think you quickly figured out, which is why your employment there was brief, that this was not your normal adult entertainment
here's the
venue.
Thing. It was not worth it for me to make $400, $500 a night in tips to bartend, which, hey, by standards, that's good money to bartend. It it was less important for me to bring that money home and to continue working in a place like that than to feel like I'm unsafe at every moment.
Yeah.
Because the security is completely lax there. Half the time the security's out front flirting with like the door person instead of being in the club, like watching clients. And I saw some crazy ass shit happen, like that nobody was dealing with.
Yeah. No.
And you know me, I don't take shit from people. So the minute somebody starts something slick, I'm like, who the fuck are you supposed to be? And, you know, and so when I am having to deal with these patrons instead of the security who are paid to do it, you know, and I feel unsafe there, I'm not going to work in a place like that.
Well, no. And I visited you once there. And I'm no expert, but because I've only been in, you know, a handful of times in my life in a gentleman's club. But I have to say, and just from what I've heard other people tell me, I've never seen anything like it.
I've never seen anything like
because that one place you don't go bullshitting, and for obvious reasons, because of the nature of the business, alcohol, you know, emotions, testosterone, or whatever. The sexual element of it. I mean, that's a real thing, you know, when people start having these feelings or whatever, you have to have very tight control on the environment.
You do.
Because you can't, and namely for the safety of your employees and the other patrons who are just there to have a good time. And there was absolutely no controls there.
No. And as a bartender,
and people act a fucking fool.
They do. And, you know, as a bartender, I mean, I'm there, I'm fully clothed. I'm not an entertainer.
Yes.
I'm there to serve you drinks. And when I have to take on the responsibility of like protecting entertainers from these customers instead of the actual person that's their job,
right?
Like that's not okay. Like I shouldn't have to do that, and I don't care to do it. I mean, you know me, I'm very mouthy, but you know, I just feel like that place is incredibly unsafe environment, and you know, and I'm not like against adult entertainment.
No.
You know, get that bag, make your money. If that's what you want to go do, you want to go throw some 50s on the stage, have at it.
But I think you see in this situation, the Bolden incident, this is what happens.
Yeah.
In a place like that, that could have went in a completely different direction.
Could have gone, and I feel like they could have prevented the situation from happening if they had just done the right thing.
And I think that comes to not wanting the hassle of the police, not wanting any unwanted attention.
Oh, it's New Year's Eve. We don't want a scene, even though you just had somebody pull a gun on a customer in the bathroom. Cool.
It also leads you to wonder what else is really going on there.
Well,
is there other illicit activities? You know, drugs, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Money laundering. What?
Well,
allegedly, maybe
it's for the best that God put that place underwater.
Well, maybe.
Maybe they're already back up and running.
And I'm not even prudish about these things. But,
no.
Yeah. But if you're gonna have an establishment, a gentleman's club, adult entertainment, whatever you want to call it, there needs to be standard operating procedures. There needs to be policies in place.
Protocols that must be followed. It
needs to be highly professional.
You need Dalton.
And you cannot endanger your customers' employees.
No, you need Dalton down there kicking people in the face.
Lackadaisical attitudes. All right, Dylan, here is another story out of North Carolina. This is from Asheboro, so down towards the Piedmont area. A 25-year-old man known for the, quote, "Thank You, Jesus" movement has been charged on suspicion of a child sex crime. You know those yard signs?
I was going to say, is that what that is?
In our old neighborhood, there were several houses that had these yard signs, and they say, "Thank you, Jesus."
Thank you, Jesus.
Because every time you'd step by one, you would always say out loud, "Thank you, Jesus."
Well, yeah.
Now, according to the Randolph County Sheriff's Office, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children sent a cyber tip to authorities, and the Invictus Task Force began an investigation in January of 2025, and as a result, investigators identified Lucas Hunt as a suspect. Now, this is per WRAL-TV. Police allege that Hunt received video footage of two minor girls engaging in a sex act. And on February 25th, he was arrested on one count of second-degree sexual exploitation of a minor, and he was booked into the Randolph County Detention Center on a $75,000 bond. That seems too low, in my opinion.
I mean, the fact you want to possess or look at something like that, I mean, We talk about this all the time. We were talking about this yesterday, that the true crime fans know that it seems like in the child exploitation / molestation area of true crime, these people and rape, let's be honest, they get the most chances of anyone ever of in and out of jail, small sentences, slaps on the wrist, probation, suspended sentences, all this bullshit, be it ankle monitors that aren't looked at. I mean, all this.
We as a society do not take these perpetrators as, or we do not take it as seriously as we should.
No, dude, the first time that you molest a child or exploit a child or even have these materials, because I'm sorry, there's no regular, normal, healthy reason to have this stuff, you're done. It's a zero tolerance policy, and that would save so many kids and victims. God,
should just cut off all your limbs.
Well, look, first offense is physical castration, and we'll see where you go from there.
Well, it's kind of hard to film child porn when you don't have hands. Now, Hunt is reportedly the man behind the nationwide "Thank You Jesus" movement. This was founded when he was a teenager, Dylan, and according to the organization's website, he, quote, prayed for help to display Easter signs in his hometown and prayed that these efforts would have a giant impact on the kingdom. Now, the movement has reportedly sold over 25,000 signs, car magnets, garden flags, and bracelets.
Okay.
But then, here he is, being gross.
In the name of Jesus, which is...
Well, I don't know about all that.
Well, I'm saying, apparently.
But he's a creep. Dylan, a serial killer, an accused serial killer in Chicago is accused of killing 6 strangers within a year, and prosecutors say, quote, this person had a disregard toward human life. Damn. Now, this is very frightening because Antonio Reyes was 16 to 17 years old when the murders began in Chicago back in 2020. He has been charged with killing 6 random people with during a 9-month period. When he was just a teenager.
Now, is this the person who was riding around shooting people randomly?
Well, I'm going to get into that. So Reyes is now 21, and he's been charged with 5 felony counts of first-degree murder and 4 felony counts of attempted first-degree murder in a rash of these random killings. At the time the 5 new charges were brought against him, Reyes was already in custody at the Cook County Jail for the alleged murder of 26-year-old Luis Davalos Garcia in June of 2020. Davalos Garcia was parked outside his girlfriend's house with a baby on board sign in the car window when he was shot to death. At the time, Reyes may have been upset due to a recent breakup, they say. And in 2022, Reyes allegedly used a shank to try to kill his cellmate at the Cook County Jail. The 5 murders Reyes was charged with on Tuesday include the murder of a 31-year-old man on March 2nd of 2020, the murder of a 21-year-old man on April 5th of 2020, plus an additional attempted murder of a victim that day. The murder of a 16-year-old boy on May 1st of 2020, and the murder of a 31-year-old man on November 8th, 2020. And then there were attempted murder of 3 children between the ages of 3 and 9 on November 8th, and the murder of a 20-year-old man on November 9th of 2020.
But what about his rights, Heather?
The 3 children he allegedly tried to murder that November were in the same vehicle with the adult victim who was killed in a barrage of bullet fire. A .40 caliber handgun was found in the summer of 2020 that was linked to other crime scenes. They were able to get some shell casings from this gun. So yeah, Dylan, he basically combed the streets of Chicago looking for victims and just randomly started shooting people and killing them.
Well, I mean, that's
over the course of time.
Reminiscent, honestly, to like Son of Sam, right?
Very scary. And to be so young.
Yeah, I know. So it almost sounds like, if I understood what you said there, that in the first incident he had a personal connection. But then maybe...
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, it said he may have been upset due to a breakup.
Oh, so he
but
just
I think maybe
randomly acted out.
He was upset over a breakup, and that's when he just randomly acted out.
Okay, but it sounds like he found out he liked it, maybe?
Well, yeah. I guess you got to try something to make sure you like it, Dylan.
Damn. I mean, how scary is that? You could just be walking, because there's nothing to prevent people from doing that. You know what I mean?
It's
Riding by you
very
and
scary.
shooting.
It's very frightening. Dylan, there are several true crime documentaries that are coming out in 2025. I want to know what you think about some of these.
Okay.
And if you're excited about some of these. Now, we did watch this documentary on Netflix, and I have to say it was pretty interesting. Jerry Springer's Fights Camera Action.
Dude, that was nostalgic.
Yeah, we might actually cover that on an episode. Like just a kind of our little true crime movie club. So, Jerry Springer Fights Camera Action is a 2-part docu-series that pulls back the curtain on America's most controversial talk show, exposing some of the biggest scandals on and off screen. There was a brutal murder of a guest, Nancy Campbell Panitz, at the hands of her ex-husband, Ralph Panitz, in the wake of their appearance on the controversial talk show. There's also Hulu's Scamanda, which uses exclusive interviews from family and friends to explore the case of Amanda Riley, who pretended to be battling blood cancer while profiting from fake fundraising efforts.
Dude, I actually started that one.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I watched a little bit of the first episode.
Okay. And then one of the biggest I've heard people talking about in the true crime community is the Netflix American Murder, Gabby Petito. Petito's loved ones speak out about the final months before her death, in which her partner, Brian Laundrie, confessed that he killed her. I guess after, and then he dies by suicide. They have the travel vloggers' journals, text, footage that's going to be able to kind of paint her story for the audience. And you started that one as well.
Yeah, I think that's a must watch. Honestly, that was a rather big case in recent history of true crime. And so I think, and I felt like I knew the details for the most part as that was unfolding. But I think this will be interesting because I was never part of, her video blog or anything like that. And I mean, to have so much documentation, leading up a video. And that's why I think that Love on the Run that we watched.
Yes.
With that prison guard. And
Vicky and Casey White.
Yeah.
Not related, but they share the same last name.
I think that made that pretty fascinating because they had all the recorded audio of the calls and video, obviously, from inside the prison.
It makes for a compelling narrative.
Yeah. I mean, even up to their last moment, there was audio recording. So, yeah, it was very compelling.
Investigation Discovery will be releasing Who is Luigi Mangione. Just 2 months after Mangione was charged for the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in late 2024, Investigation Discovery will be unpacking Mangione's background. They're going to track his trajectory to understand what led him to land behind bars. Now, he's pled not guilty to multiple counts of murder, including murder as an act of terrorism. Then we have Peacock's Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy. It will address the investigation that led to 5 people being federally charged for Matthew Perry's October 2023 death. The actor's assistant, Kenneth Iwamasa, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to distribute ketamine causing death, while an acquaintance of Perry's named Eric Fleming pleaded guilty to conspiracy to distribute ketamine and distribution of ketamine resulting in death. Dr. Mark Chavez pleaded guilty to conspiring to distribute ketamine, and they've cooperated with the investigation in exchange for a lesser charge. So that should be an interesting. There's also the ketamine queen, Jasveen Sangha.
Damn.
So, I mean, there are a lot of folks, like I said, 5 people tied up in Perry's death.
What are your thoughts on that? When someone's actively choosing to use a substance like that, certainly it's controlled. And this, I would say ketamine's probably even more controlled than, the illicit drugs like cocaine.
Well, I think when you get into, you have medical professionals who are
they know better.
Over-prescribing and they know better, just like in the case of Michael Jackson.
Right.
Like you had a legitimate doctor who's overseeing the administering of these drugs or whatever. And so, yeah, that's like, it's malpractice.
What goes against the Hippocratic Oath of doing no harm?
But then again, when we get into these cases of like drug dealers being charged with the death of somebody who overdoses on like fentanyl or an opioid or something, I mean, I hate to say that's the nature of substance abuse, but I mean, it's just such a murky situation because I'm like, if you're an adult and you're actively choosing, to partake in drugs and in the drug world, and you're buying illicit drugs from some shady drug dealer,
right?
You have no idea what you're putting in your body, but you're still choosing to do that.
Well, I'm saying
So I think at some point we have to say, okay, where is the personal responsibility here?
How is that different under that train of thought or logic than the person at the ABC store who continues to sell to someone who's slowly killing themselves, drinking themselves to death, and they can see them, they don't look good, they look sick, they look, fucked up because they're in the grips of this addiction.
Because I guess one is legal.
How
and one
is that
not,
different
right?
than a heroin dealer who gives somebody a hot shot of heroin? I mean, honestly, in my mind, it's not.
Well, I don't want to step on toes,
but
because I know there's a lot of heated feelings surrounding addiction and substance abuse.
I think, we could take it a step further. Soda, how can I not? My mom's diabetic, and she shouldn't be having these, super sugary drinks, but she's still being allowed to go buy these things, and it's killed her. I mean, that's a slippery slope
what are
of
you
conversation.
Going to do? Go punch the Pepsi man in the face?
Well, I'm saying, but that's kind of a,
Well, again, I just think a lot of times when we get into substance abuse and drug addiction and drugs, people want to point fingers, but there's this element of personal responsibility and accountability that seems to be missing from the conversation a lot of times.
Right.
It's like a finger pointing game. There's always an excuse why this person's doing it, but it's never just you turn the mirror on yourself and say, hey, I'm doing it because I like it or because I want to do it. Or, I'm making a decision to do this. Nobody's ever made me take fentanyl,
right?
But I want to take it. And I'm somebody who's, I've had issues with alcohol in the past. So when I was much younger, so I get it. I understand, but I also just think, our society, we need to learn a bit of accountability for ourselves.
Yeah, well, I agree.
Across the board.
Well, I agree.
There's also a Hulu documentary called Devil in the Family, The Fall of Ruby Franke. Former YouTube star Ruby Franke and her former business partner Jody Hildebrandt received prison sentences for pleading guilty to 4 counts of aggravated child abuse back in 2023. And this documentary is a 3-part series that's going to offer more background information on that case. Netflix has Chaos, the Manson Murders coming out this year. It's probably, they haven't really released a lot of information about it, but I'm going to say it's probably going to focus on, of course, Charles Manson and, the murder of those 7 people back in 1969.
Yeah, and there's multiple, which we learned from your in-depth 3-part deep dive, that there's a lot of avenues that you could discuss. Some of it gets out into the conspiracy theory realm with Dr. Jolly and all that around, Haight-Ashbury times. It really gets crazy. That story is so
CIA.
crazy. Well, yeah.
If anybody's read Tom O'Neill's book.
Yeah.
Chaos. Netflix will be releasing Gone Girls, the Long Island serial killer. It's going to take a look back at the women who disappeared from New York City and Long Island before the 2010 discovery of female remains, which were discovered in the Gilgo Beach area of Long Island, which led authorities to believe they had a serial killer, that these murders were connected. And of course, now we have someone in custody, Rex Heuermann. I'm not really sure how you say his last name.
Yeah, well, and I think that might make that documentary interesting, because I would like to see the full story of how they finally led to Heuermann.
Yeah, so we've got a lot as far as, true crime documentaries to keep us talking around the water cooler for days.
I'm going to have to start today.
Yeah, there's a lot
We're
coming
going to watch one tonight.
Okay.
All right.
But I do recommend the Jerry Springer, and like I said, we might recap that for a movie club.
Yeah,
I learned a lot about the show that, I wasn't fully aware.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think I remember I knew of the murder, but it was I didn't remember that really being a news story back in the day.
No, I remember that, what was it, Jenny Jones?
Jenny Jones, I knew about that one.
There was a situation on her show, and she was actually forced, seemingly unwillingly to testify. in court on that, and that was basically the end of her career, wasn't it?
Yes, I believe so.
You know, Daytime Talk, I guess it had its heyday. You know, and I mean, gosh, I remember back
the 90s.
Yeah, all
there was
those.
a lot of talk. You had Donahue.
Yeah, you had
Geraldo.
Clan fighting on Geraldo.
My favorite, Sally Jesse Raphael with her red glasses. You had Oprah.
You had
I never watched Oprah.
What's her Ricky Lake show?
Ricky Lake show.
Gosh,
yeah, you had a lot.
So many.
Then you had all the late night talk shows like Arsenio. Of course, Leno, Letterman.
Yeah, Conan.
And I did like Conan back in the day.
I felt like late night back then was much more untamed, if you will.
It was funny and entertaining.
Right.
And I just don't find, maybe my sense of humor is not with it in 2025.
It's very tame nowadays.
But I do not find, I'm going to just say this and I might get some hate. I don't think Jimmy Fallon is funny. And I don't like that show, and I will not watch it. I've seen it like once, and I'm just like, he gets on my nerves.
Well, no. I mean, honestly, in that situation, it's like trying to watch The Daily Show after Jon Stewart left. I mean, tonight, after the big ones were gone, or even out of contention for getting the spot, and you end up with Jimmy Fallon, it really doesn't make sense.
Or Jimmy Kimmel. I mean, come on, guys. Really?
But it's so I don't know, it's so tame and kind of boring nowadays, you know? I mean, seemed kind of like if you were up that late as a kid, for one, you know, and getting to see this, it just seemed like a lot more like you were kind of watching something that was meant for adults.
Letterman's top 10 was hilarious, and I always love like his reaction when someone did something kind of outrageous or unexpected.
Right.
I mean, it was like unscripted, you know, like Madonna flashing him or Drew Barrymore or, you know, whatever. And you're like watching his reaction.
Yeah.
Because he's trying to be professional, but he's also just like shocked. I don't know. And then Conan was hilarious. Like the little comedy bits that they would do on the Conan show were so funny. My favorite one was called If They Made It. And he would take, and this was back before Photoshop was good. And they would take like two celebrities' photos and say if they had a kid, and it would just make this horrible looking creature using all the celebrities' like worst features.
Yeah.
And combining them.
Oh my gosh.
It was like one of my favorites.
All right. So thank you for that recap. I appreciate it.
Well, after all that recap, I got to go wipe and wash my hands.
Oh
so
gosh.
I will talk to you later, Dylan.
Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.